At 4:18 p.m., the Caribbean looked calm enough to fool anyone until a Venezuelan warship suddenly broke the horizon, accelerating straight toward a U.S. Navy destroyer. No radio call, no warning. Just steel, speed, and intent. On the USS Winslow, alarms buzzed, low sailors froze mid-step, and the captain gave a single order: hold course, record everything. What happened next wasn't a drill, wasn't an accident, and definitely wasn't what Venezuela expected. Because when you charge a U.S. destroyer at full speed, there's no turning back, only consequences. Stay with me. This escalates fast. Inside the Combat Information Center, the comm broke with a single call-out: new surface contact. Bearing 214. Speed increasing. No one flinched, but everyone straightened. The SPY-1D radar displayed a lone blip, accelerating far faster than any fishing vessel in these waters. At first, it behaved like a standard Caribbean patrol craft, running 12 knots, slow, steady, predictable. But then in under 2 minutes, it punched up to 22 knots, then 24. That was not routine. The CIC quickly tagged the profile: hull-length radar, mast shape, signal return, forward gun mount. They all matched a Venezuelan Navy Gary-class patrol ship, a 2,300-ton steel hull, built for coastal enforcement, but fully capable of bold intercept maneuvers. It had every reason to be here politically, but no reason to be running this fast at an American destroyer in international waters. The officer of the deck issued the first hail immediately. Venezuelan naval vessel, this is United States warship conducting lawful transit. You are closing distance at high speed. Alter course, acknowledge. Silence. Second hail, this time in Spanish. Again, silence. A third brief moment passed where the only sound inside the bridge was the hum of electronics and the faint vibration of steel under power. The Venezuelan vessel kept coming. On the bridge, the captain stepped forward, not rushing, not raising his voice. He didn't have to. Maintain ROE. Log everything. Do not alter course. Boots shifted softly across the deck as watchstanders moved into their next positions. On the starboard side, the ship's long-range optical camera rotated smoothly and locked onto the incoming vessel. The image upscaled instantly. Venezuelan sailors in helmets clustered near the bow. Not manning weapons, but not relaxed either. Back inside CIC, the SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite detected the first sweep. A low-power radar beam from the Venezuelan ship was now painting the Winslow. The EW officer called it clearly surface search mode, not fire control. Yet. That single word "yet" hung in the air like weight. At 4:20 p.m., the contact accelerated again. 26 knots now, closing the distance on a direct intercept vector. No zigzag, no adjustment, no recognition of the hails. The CPA closest point of approach shrunk to under 3 nautical miles and dropping. This wasn't shadowing. This wasn't miscommunication. This was intentional pressure. The destroyer responded the way U.S. warships always do, calmly, methodically, in layers. The 5-inch main gun rotated a few degrees, not aiming, just positioning visibly, the naval equivalent of placing both hands on a table to show readiness. The crew on the flight deck began prepping the MH-60R Seahawk, fastening down sensor pods, checking comms, loading non-lethal signaling flares. The helicopter wasn't intended as a threat. It was a floating camera, a flying deterrent, an unmistakable sign that the U.S. Navy had more eyes and angles than any approaching ship could hope to match. In the background, radios crackled low. The Winslow sailors weren't panicking. They were doing what they were trained for: watch everything, predict everything, record everything. Because in gray zone confrontations like this, evidence mattered as much as steel. At 4:22 p.m., the Venezuelan ship surged again. Exhaust haze thickened behind its stern as its diesel turbines strained. It was now pushing beyond its typical cruise speed, angling straight toward the destroyer's bow. One wrong calculation, one stubborn turn could turn this into a collision at nearly 30 miles per hour. The bridge fell into a quiet, focused tension. Contact maneuvering with intent, CIC reported. CPA now 2.1 nautical miles. Time to CPA 6 minutes. Outside, the Caribbean glow dimmed slightly as clouds drifted overhead, turning the sea a deeper blue. But the real shadow was the steel closing in fast. The Seahawk crew stood by. The captain kept his arms folded. The destroyer held its course, like a line drawn in the water. And with every second, the Venezuelan warship came closer. Too close for coincidence, too fast for comfort, and far too silent for anything except confrontation. The standoff had begun. At 4:26 p.m., the tension snapped into movement. The MH-60R Seahawk lifted off the flight deck with a deep mechanical growl, rotors slicing the humid Caribbean air. The helicopter banked left, dropped to 250 feet, and accelerated toward the Venezuelan patrol ship. Its presence alone changed the geometry of the encounter. A destroyer is threatening by mass. A Seahawk is threatening by proximity. Inside the cockpit, the pilots kept their voices even. Winslow, this is Eagle 1. We're en route. Sensors hot. Back on the destroyer, sailors tracked the helicopter's silhouette against the sinking sun. The Seahawk's MX-20 FLIR turret, its high-resolution electro-optical eye rotated freely, ready to capture every twitch of movement on the Venezuelan deck. The U.S. wasn't preparing to fire, it was preparing to document, and that was often far more powerful. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan ship did not slow. In fact, as the Seahawk closed, the contact performed its most aggressive shift yet. It broke into a shallow starboard turn, aiming directly for the Winslow's projected track, an attempt to force the U.S. destroyer to maneuver first. In the world of warships, changing course equals conceding initiative. Inside CIC, the tracking officer didn't blink. Contact is now on a hard intercept vector. CPA 1.8 nautical miles. Time 3 minutes. The captain gave a single nod. Launch the laser. Non-lethal only. At 4:28 p.m., the Seahawk approached within visual range, roughly 1.8 nautical miles from the Venezuelan hull. Through FLIR, heat blooms from engine exhaust glowed white, hot, and small metallic reflections revealed sailors huddled around the forward 76mm gun, not manned, but ready to be manned. Then came the signal. A thin, unmistakable green laser pulse flickered across the Venezuelan bridge windows. This was not a weapon, but a message. A universally recognized non-lethal cue used by navies to say, "Stop. We see you. Change course." The Venezuelan crew reacted instantly. One figure ducked, another stumbled back. A third raised binoculars toward the Seahawk, trying to decode intent. But intent wasn't hidden. It was painted plainly in that green beam. Inside the Seahawk, the sensor operator toggled radio frequencies and transmitted Venezuelan naval vessel, "You are operating unsafely in international waters. Alter course immediately. Your actions are being recorded." Spanish repetition followed. Still no official reply. On board the Venezuelan ship, movement intensified. Sailors shifting, gesturing, yelling across the deck. But the ship kept its speed at 26 knots, wake widening behind it like a claw mark across the sea. Pressure was the goal, and they were leaning fully into it. But then came the first break. At 4:30 p.m., the Venezuelan vessel's wake shortened just a fraction, but noticeable. Instruments on the Winslow registered a drop to 24 knots, then 22. The ship was still on an intercept course, but now the aggression looked less like a charge and more like hesitation. "They're reassessing," the EW officer murmured. The Seahawk maintained its orbit, broad, slow, dominant. The FLIR camera zoomed deeper into the Venezuelan bridge. Even through glass, thermal outlines of crew were bright, frantic, moving with uncertainty rather than command. Inside CIC, the atmosphere shifted almost imperceptibly. This wasn't about who had bigger guns. It was about who controlled the narrative. And right now, the U.S. Navy controlled every pixel. At 4:32 p.m., the Venezuelan ship turned 2 degrees to port, not much to the naked eye, but to the radar operators, it was the first real sign of de-escalation. Within seconds, CIC confirmed contact altering course away from collision vector. CPA widening, now 2.4 nautical miles. The captain allowed a slow exhale. Maintain stance. Don't break formation. Let them finish the turn. Through the Seahawks camera, the shift was obvious. Venezuelan sailors stepped back from the main gun, arms lowered. One crewman, perhaps realizing the tension had passed a point of danger, raised both hands in a universal gesture meaning no harm intended. The helicopter held position silent and steady. And then at 4:33 p.m., a crackle broke through the destroyer's speakers, a clipped, heavily accented transmission from the Venezuelan bridge. United States naval vessel. We are conducting sovereign patrol duties. Request you adjust heading. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even accurate. But it was communication. The Winslow responded instantly. Voice firm, clear, unmistakably professional Venezuelan vessel. We are conducting lawful transit. Your maneuvers have been unsafe. We will maintain course. Another pause. Then nothing. No more speed surges. No more turns into danger. Just 2 ships holding distance as tension slowly drained from the water between them. By 4:35 p.m., the confrontation had shifted decisively. The Venezuelan warship was still present, still watching, still projecting, but no longer charging. The moment of danger had passed, but the story of why it happened had only begun. By 4:38 p.m., the Venezuelan patrol ship had widened distance to 6 nautical miles, settling into a parallel but non-threatening course. The Winslow maintained her heading, her crew steady, her sensors still recording. The confrontation was over, but the implications were only beginning to unfold, because encounters like this don't happen in a vacuum. Not in the Caribbean, not in 2025, and definitely not between the U.S. Navy and a government as politically cornered as Venezuela. To understand why that patrol ship charged at a U.S. destroyer, you have to rewind 2 weeks back to an operation Venezuela still refuses to publicly acknowledge. On September 2, 2025, U.S. Southern Command quietly confirmed something explosive. 2 Venezuelan smuggling vessels believed to be carrying high volumes of synthetic opioids were kinetically neutralized in international waters after ignoring multiple warnings. Drones supported by U.S. Navy ISR had ended both pursuits in minutes. The street value of the seized contraband, tens of millions of dollars. The political cost to Caracas, incalculable. In the days that followed, intelligence analysts tracked an abrupt spike in Venezuelan maritime activity. Patrol routes grew erratic, ships sailed farther offshore, radar emissions increased, and aircraft performed low, slow presence flyovers near U.S. vessels. This was not a Navy preparing for war. This was a Navy trying to save face. Venezuela's goal wasn't to damage a destroyer, it couldn't. Its goal was symbolism. A Gary-class patrol ship barreling toward a U.S. destroyer at 26 knots sends a powerful message for domestic audiences. We confront the Americans. We push back. But symbolism is dangerous when the opposing force documents every second with military-grade optics and electronic intelligence systems. And the Winslow documented everything. The real game, gray zone chess. What happened on that afternoon wasn't a clash of firepower, it was a clash of political needs. Venezuela needed a moment of defiance, something to show the public after the embarrassment of losing 2 drug boats without a fight. The U.S. needed to maintain international law, no aggression, no escalation, but absolute professionalism. Both sides played their parts. Venezuela tried a high-speed intercept radar painting and tight approach. The U.S. responded with logs, optics, a helicopter, and unwavering course discipline. In modern naval strategy, this is called gray zone maneuvering, aggressive actions crafted to intimidate or embarrass an opponent while staying under the threshold of open conflict. There are no missiles, no gunfire, just pressure posture and political theater conducted on open water. And in that arena, the U.S. Navy has a weapon far stronger than firepower, restraint, plus recording. When a Seahawk stores high-resolution FLIR footage of a foreign ship performing unsafe maneuvers, the narrative becomes indisputable. It becomes evidence. Evidence that can be used diplomatically. Evidence that can justify future operations. Evidence that survives far longer than a 3-minute intercept at sea. Why Venezuela backed down? The moment the laser flashed across the Venezuelan bridge windows, the calculus changed. Because for all their bravado, Venezuelan commanders know a simple truth. A U.S. destroyer is not just a ship. It is a floating international incident machine. Every radar sweep is logged. Every maneuver is analyzed. Every second is recorded with precision. When the Venezuelan crew realized the Winslow wasn't reacting with fear but with data collection, they understood the risk. One wrong turn and the world would have clear evidence that they, not the U.S., initiated escalation. Backing down wasn't weakness. It was self-preservation. What the incident really means for the region, the Caribbean, is entering a new phase of tension, one defined not by full-scale conflict, but by posturing pushback and politically motivated encounters. Vancouver Island, South China Sea, Persian Gulf. These regions have lived in gray zone tension for years. Now the Caribbean is joining that list for the U.S. The lesson is clear. Venezuela will continue to probe pressure and posture as long as domestic politics demand it. For Venezuela, the lesson is even clearer. The U.S. Navy will not blink, will not break formation, and will not be intimidated. Not by speed, not by silence, not by theatrics. At 4:45 p.m., the Seahawk touched back down on the Winslow's flight deck. The Venezuelan patrol ship was now 9 nautical miles astern, a shrinking shadow on radar. No shots fired, no collision. Just a line drawn in saltwater. Professionalism beats provocation, and the Caribbean just became a much smaller ocean for nations willing to take risks. The real question now is simple. What happens the next time a Venezuelan captain decides to test that line? And if you want more real-time naval encounters just like this, make sure you subscribe to Navyclash, where every wave has a story the world needs to hear.